All right, going to attempt to tie the craft for Game Changer for like the 15th time. My SD card, I don't know, got all wonky on me one time. The battery died another time. They take quite a while to tie, so it's a bit frustrating. But it's not like I don't have the time. So anyways, here we go. Going to be using the starter pack articulated fish spines by Fish Skull. It's got all the spines you'll need to use. I'm going to be using 3 10mm this size, 2 15, a 20, and a 25. So it's going to be kind of a big girl. Spinning it up with Veevus GSP 100. Going to be using a bunch of craft fur, maybe some filler flash for some support in a different array of colors. We've got Senyo's intruder wire we're going to be utilizing. And yeah, I'll cover some more stuff as we go through it. Okay, so, also the hooks, I guess. So the rear hook is going to be this Gamakatsu SL12S in a size 2. It's an awesome hook. It's pretty heavy gauge, straight eye, big gap. Good for these Game Changers. And then the front hook's going to be this Aberdeen Predator in a 3-odd by Ahrex. This is an awesome hook. This is a really good company too. They make some badass stuff. All right, so what we're going to do here is just a couple turns. And we're going to start with yellow craft fur in the tail there. So the key that I've found to tying this craft fur changer specifically to have it turn out the way I want it to look is really you gotta make those fibers short in the back. We're building a taper. If you've watched any Game Changer videos before, you know it's all about the taper, right? So if I just tie in this whole clump and it's a 3-inch long tail back there, you know, you're gonna have to build everything a lot larger. I want it pretty small. So what I'm gonna do against my better judgment is pull all these long hairs out. That's typically the ones we want to use, but I found that just the shorter guys, that's what we want here. And we're gonna reverse tie this in because we want that tail to kind of, you know, flare out a little bit. You don't want it to just slick down. So I'm just going to kind of even these ends up. There we go. Grab it and just push it over the top of that spine. Go around with 2 loose wraps. Once it's kind of secure, just maybe 3 or 4 more in there. Cool. Kind of puff it out a little bit. You could hollow out a pen. Makes it good for when you're reverse tying to push everything back. Work your thread forward. And then just whip finisher off. You could add flash on the tail at this point if you wanted to before you whip finish it. This guy I kind of want mute. I'm not going to have any flash besides like the filler flash and some of that shoulder material, the body chenille. So I'm just going to get my bodkin, put just a little touch of the Pro Sport Fisher UV resin, and just kind of light it up with the UV light. If I want to touch on UV lights, they're not all created equal. It's really worth to buy the big boy, the Infinity light. One of the bonuses, it's USB, so you don't have to go around buying batteries, or if it dies midway through a tie, you don't have to go to the store or search for batteries. It's a lot more powerful, so it's gonna cure stuff really quickly. I've had mine over a year now, maybe going on almost 2. It's awesome. It holds a charge forever. I mean, weeks, and it's great. It's just a good tool. If you tie a lot of flies, I highly suggest that anybody that's coming to the shop knows I'm always pushing the Infinity lights on them, but for good reason. just make tying so much more enjoyable and fast. So we want to get that other connection. We're going to get the next 10 millimeter, and I want to pry this up a little bit. Shouldn't have cut my nails yesterday. It just obviously makes it easier to slide on that attachment if you've got a little bit of a gap there. It's not just so tight. Easy peasy, right? Pop that guy out, this guy back in. One of the tricks to these flies that somebody found out is you have to get your thread base here where it connects back there to the previous one. There's obviously a little bit of a gap, so your fly it allows that articulation to swim around. But they found that sometimes it'll cause it to foul. So if you get some Zap-A-Gap and you just kind of put some up there in that neck of the woods, and then really lightly walk your thread around it. If you reef really hard down, your thread will slide down it. So you just want to close that up about halfway and then back down to the bottom. So we're going to add another stitch of yellow craft fur. So that's the thing about this fly is like there's a couple little steps in there that we'll cover, but for the most part you're doing the same thing. You're just making it larger each time. So I'm still going to pull out these long fibers. I don't want a super long piece back here. This is, you know, the wrist of the fish, so the skinniest part. So it doesn't need to be mega shouldery and huge profile. And so here I'll actually pull out quite a bit of that under fur we were talking about. I don't want it to stand up really big back there yet. And I'll kind of level them out, you know. That's still long. Every time I tie this fly, this craft fur gets shorter and shorter and shorter, and the flies end up looking better and better. But it goes against everything. It's like the majority of flies that I normally tie are steelhead flies, and so you want those real wispy, airy, long fibers. So it's hard to kind of go against years of favoring those. So there we got our little mini shoulder back there, and this guy up front. So take the hollow pen and just push it all back. The bonus of using that Veevus GSP thread, like people have asked me, like, oh, can I just use 6/0 or whatever? You can. You got to be a little bit more delicate, but there's so many with these articulated spine flies and the connections, and you're cutting wire off and on, and there's just so many spots to nick your thread that I used to just kind of break thread a few times going through that fly, and I just got over it. So the GSP stuff is really thin, so you don't really notice it, except it's just really strong. So just touching that thread with the UV, I mean, you can see how quick this stuff cures. It's like I just go around it for maybe 5 seconds total. She good? Third 10 millimeter spine. This guy, same thing, kind of pull that open a little bit if you can. Work, great. Okay, and just gonna completely repeat that process. So if you're one of those people that's just, I don't wanna say impatient, it makes it sound like I'm ripping on you, but if you're impatient, you can just fast forward to the end of this spine, because I'm gonna do the same exact thing. I mean, literally, I'm going to touch it with Zap-A-Gap, I'm going to trim the craft fur, I'm going to tie it in backwards, whip finish it, and then we'll be on to the next one. Cover up that eye a little bit, pull out the long hairs, level it up. Push it over. 2 loose wraps. Push it back with the pen. So you can see it's starting to flare out a little bit. If you want to control that taper, you can build these thread dams whoops, not on top of it, just right in front of that craft fur, just kind of building a cone. So it's going to be higher next to the craft fur, lower in the front. We don't want the taper to be too big back here, so you can control it by just building those little thread dams. So we've got our rear kind of section, those 3 articulations, keeping it kind of airy. You know, you don't want just clumps of craft fur on there. The stuff moves really good when it's wet, but you don't want just a big wad of it on there. So we've got our 3 10 millimeter sections. We want to go for our first 15 mil. Same thing, I'm going to kind of pry that guy open just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so get our thread base. With this flat thread, I didn't really mention it, but just spin it a little bit tends to help it grip. Just give it a little spin beforehand. Chartreuse. Same thing, pulling out all those long guys. Pull out some of the guard hairs. Not all of them. You want to start to build that shoulder a little bit. Gonna turn it around. Push it over the top of that shank. And then again around 2 times real loose just to make sure to grab all that craft fur. Then you can tighten it up with a couple wraps. Got our little shoulder back here, but it's not touching it. You don't want so much that it's actually covering your previous work there. So if it is, you can just go in there with a pair of scissors and clean it up a little bit. Work that thread through. And again, we're going to build that small thread dam. So obviously we got a bunch of shank. We're going to add just another little clump of chartreuse on there. Put it on backwards. 2 loose wraps. Tighten it down. So that one's kind of getting in the way a little bit, so we're going to just a little trim there. So you can see I'm not tying in a bunch, just huge clumps of craft fur. Kind of want to keep it airy. Little thread dam there. Starting to get a little taper there. Just hold the thread. So we're going to go ahead and attach our first hook, our rear hook here, and we're going to use that Senyo's intruder wire and get our Gamakatsu SL12S short. Get him out of there for a second. This guy in. Get a thread base on here. Now I put a little bit more brushable zap gap on this part. I'll put it back to the bend and then I'll get it almost to the eye of the hook, and that's just because when I take my shitty scissors and I cut this intruder wire, and I'm only cutting, like that's probably too much, and that's probably like 3.5 inches. I'm going to lay it down right on top of that hook, and so it just helps it kind of stick where you want it. Wrap it back. And here you actually want to go down the bend of the hook just a little bit. And I'll tell you the reason for that right now. To get these flies to swim the best, you want that to be level. You know what I'm saying? Like you want that eye to be, like, I think I might have just done 2 turns too many down there, so I made it a little bit higher. You want it to be level with the front hook when it ties in. See, so a little high now. I'll get pretty specific with this. I really want it to be straight. I think it just makes these flies swim a lot better. So now we're getting there. So we'll just put that in. Bad scissors here and cut. Tie it all the way back in there. Pretty small little loop back there. I don't really want a giant loop back there. So there that is. And we'll probably do another little touch of chartreuse on the rear of this hook. Still pulling out the longest fibers. Not pulling out as much guard hair. Kind of checking it. It's going to be right here. Looks good. Push it all the way back. 2 loose wraps. Sure it's all spun around there. Tighten down. Use our pen to flip it. Go ahead and build that thread dam in front of it to your liking, how you want to taper this. Each time you build one of these, you want that shoulder to get just a little bigger. But in the rear here, you still want to keep it pretty low. But what we're going to do is bump it up just a little bit on this next section. So I'm going to take some of this Chockletts Finesse body chenille and chartreuse. Cut off just maybe like nothing really, 1.5 inches. We're not going to use very much of this stuff. And we're going to cut on either side of that. It's basically just braid or mono braided together just to get access to that core. You just get a way better tie-in point if you tie in just the tip of that core rather than trap the materials. You just kind of, as you wrap it around, just like you would anything, just sweep all those fibers back. And I don't know how many times we're going to go around, maybe 3, maybe more, maybe 4. Just kind of judge it and look at it. That's 3 right there. We'll go 4. And I'm pulling on this stuff pretty good. Each time I go around, it kind of helps stand those materials up a little bit more, and you get a nice tight wrap through there. All right. Pulling the really long hairs out still. Pulling a little bit of the guard hair out, and leveling it out. That's going to look. That's going to be our first real big step up in the shoulder. Everything else has been pretty gradual. You don't want it to be crazy big, but definitely we're hitting like the midsection of a fish. That's what we're kind of trying to mimic here. So 2 turns, pull tight, 2 more, we're good. That's right up against that body chenille, so that's fine. Get our empty pen and push everything back. Work that thread through. And build that cone. So you can see without it, it's already trying to come back over itself. Build that thread dam. Like I said, about medium pressure on pulling down on that thread. I want it tight in there, but I don't want to just rip it through the other threads. Layers, and that GSP definitely will. So now we got our little shoulder kind of helping prop up that craft fur. Okay, so that section's all done. Nice taper to it. Gonna attach our next 15 mil spine. Bend that out just a little bit. There we go. Pop that hook out. Get our thread base going. A little bit of zap. And back on that gap a little bit. And just going to fill that a little bit, like halfway, and back down to the bottom. So we got yellow and chartreuse. We're going to move to the new color. We'll go to that kind of fiery orange. We just got like a little orange estes there. That will do like the chartreuse section. We'll prop that second clump up a little bit more. So, pulling out the really long fibers. Like I said, it's basically the same thing over and over with this fly. So you get a lot of practice, which is nice. Those, I'm guessing, are a little too long still. Shorten them up just a little. We're going to take this clump, turn around backwards, over the shank, 2 loose wraps. We're good. Tighten her up. Take our hollow pen, push it back. Get that thread up there. Whoops, don't go over the materials. Make a small thread dam, allowing that taper to build up a little bit. And then we're just going to take about 1.5 inches of that orange estes there. You can use chenille or whatever. It's not super specific to that material. Just do maybe 2 or 3 wraps right in front of that craft fur. There we go. Leaving some room at the head there to add that second clump of craft fur. Cut our second clump of craft fur. Leaving a lot more of those guard hairs in on this chunk. Just to continue our taper. Flip it around backwards, push it up onto that estes. 2 loose wraps. And then push it all back with the hollow pen there. This is one of the reasons I like this GSP. When you've got little room to work with, you can kind of manhandle these materials and like shove it, force it back in there without it breaking. UV resin. Just kind of get it in there on those thread wraps. All right. So that's our 15 in front of our Gamakatsu SL12S short, size 2. Getting a little bit bigger of a taper there. Starting to come together. And now we're going to throw on that 20. There. Same thing. Thread base. There's that gap back there. And just fill in that gap about halfway. Going to add some more of that orange. We're going to start with some of that estes back there to help that taper continue. about halfway, I'd say. All right, cut another chunk, a little bit bigger, larger amount of craft fur on this one. Just start to build up that taper even more. Still pulling those really long fibers out. We don't want those in there just yet. Put it in there. Around twice. Pulling everything real tight, make sure it's in there. That's a nice little shoulder right up against that Estes. That looks good. Take our hollow pin, push it back. And just build in a small thread dam for this guy. Nice thing about craft fur is if you accidentally make one too thick, like that's kind of borderline, the one in front, you can just go through and just pluck it out a little bit, thin it out, make it shorter. Finish this guy. Add our UV resin in there, light it up. Orange section, done. So now we're going to attach our front hook, and we're going to use a 25 mil shank, but what we're going to do is we're going to cut this eye off just using a pair of dikes or some pliers that have cutters on them. We're going to attach that to our fly, like so. And then we're going to take this out and pop our Ahrex Aberdeen Predator 3-odd in the front there. So there's that hook. Get our thread base. Put our Zap-A-Gap there. So we've got the front hook tied on there. We grab our fly and just place it right on the side of this. And you don't want it too far back, right? You don't want it back here, and you don't want it up front. You want some wiggle room there. So just kind of play with that a little bit. Right where the bend starts is kind of where I lengthen it out to. So this one's kind of hard to fill some of that gap just the way this hook is, and the fact that it's a hook and not a shank, so it's got that point down there, but just kind of do your best. Just put a little zap on there and just try to lightly wrap up it. Really tight wraps here on this connection. I haven't had any of them pull out, but just to be sure, just really tight. And then I'm actually going to use UV cure on this, so I really want to lock it in there. Not a bunch, I don't want a thick coat of this, so I kind of just put some on and kind of mash it around. You move on to this fiery red here. We're going to tie just a little stitch of that orange Estes in there too. Just tie that guy in. kind of right at the barb of the hook. Wrap this guy forward. Okay. Cut a chunk of this guy off. A little bit thicker of a chunk of craft fur here, just to continue that taper. Still pulling the really, really long ones out of there, but leaving these kind of medium length ones in. Just getting a little bit longer there. So let's see. It's pretty good. Now, since it's such a long shank, I tend not to throw it all the way around, push it on like we have been. I don't know, I haven't had real good luck with that when it's really a longer shank like that. So we're just going to put it on top. Still 2 loose wraps there. Before we tighten it down, we're just going to kind of spin it around everything. Make sure it's all kind of equal around there. Real tight. Take our hollow pen, push it all back. Make a small thread dam. We're going to do another one of those. Since we're kind of getting near the end of this fly, I'm going to start to let some of those longer craft hair pieces stay in there. So, like that's really long. We're gonna still take those extra long ones out, but we'll probably keep those in. Hardly pulling any of that under fur out. Now that we've come forward a little bit, we can go back to just pushing it all the way up. Around twice. Then pulling real tight. So that's kind of bumping into that guy a little bit more than I'd like. So we're just going to kind of come in there and just so it's not just overlapping it. You want all that stuff to be moving kind of independently. But you still want a shoulder there. And another dam. Starting to get some volume there. Maybe even one more. And you know, how much you want to blend these colors together is all personal preference. It's kind of fun about using craft fur. Again, it's fairly inexpensive, so you don't feel bad if you're using a ton of it. And you can do all sorts of different color combinations. Blend stuff together. So shove it over. Just get it where you want it. 2 light wraps. Snug it up. And another maybe smaller thread dam here. That looks good. Cool. So 2 options here. You can just get your black craft fur reverse tied in real big up front and be done. I've been playing around with this stuff quite a bit, this Blane Chocklett's body tubing. So you can do some cool stuff. So I'm going to just demo that just so you guys can kind of see something different. Make just a thread base, something to so it can stick to it. And take your crappy scissors, cut off about 1.5 inches of this stuff. It will come apart on you, so you want to singe the ends once you cut it off. You don't need to melt them crazy, just enough so they don't kind of unravel on you. And then you want to put just a little layer of Zap-A-Gap on that thread, because this stuff's pretty slick. It wants to spin a lot. So go ahead and just pop that guy on there. There we are. Give it a couple turns. This stuff's pretty slick, so it wants to spin on you. So just get your Zap-A-Gap again. That will help it kind of lock in place. Get in there nice and good. And then you just push this. I'm really bad at this. So you just push this tubing, push this tubing, and you want it to basically fold over itself. See, I told you I was really bad at this. We're getting there. You get better working with materials over time. This one's no exception, but this one is kind of weird when you first start out with it. So it's completely over the material right now, folded back over itself. Just push it forward again till it's off all that craft fur, and tie it kind of directly in on top of the other section. Grab some UV res here. Not an ungodly amount, but just make sure you're kind of getting it all around there. Hit it with the light. That's pretty much locked in there, not going anywhere. Cut your thread. And so, tying this in like that, push it back over itself again, and it's going to create this cool little, well, dam, for lack of a better word. And so that's just going to be a nice prop. You know, there's holes in it, so it's not going to be horrible to cast or anything like that, but it's just going to prop it up there. So if you just get your thread wraps again in front, just really helps it keep its profile over time. You know, you fish these flies a bunch and they're just going to get matted down more and more and more. This just helps it kind of keep its original form a little bit better. You could have added a thing of black craft fur and then this to have it a little bit closer to the front. So if you stick eyes on it, you got something to push. It's not that big of a deal here. What I'm going to do is use it to kind of prop out my pec fins. And I'm just going to use a couple feathers off a hen saddle here. And as far as pec fins go, it's really dealer's choice. You can use, there's so many different types of feathers that you could use. Anything that looks like a pec fin, you could use 3 or to 6 or a bunch of crazy legs or little rubber legs. Just cut real short, like, you know, 1 inch or something like that. Just stick them out the sides, or you can use natural feathers like this or whatever. It's kind of just experiment. I do like my pec fins rather large though. I feel like if you're gonna put it on there, let them see it. All right, time for the black craft fur head, right? So I'm just gonna get a good chunk of this stuff, kind of our thickest clump that we're gonna cut out. I'm still gonna reverse tie this just because I like the way the guard hairs are gonna be turned around and I don't have to trim them, and it makes kind of a cleaner head. So, like so, push it up in there. Still 2 loose wraps around. Let everything kind of set where you want it. Then you can pull pretty tight to cinch it in there. Any little fibers that didn't get trapped in there are going to fall out. Kind of spread that around equally. And our last thread dam, not very big. Just kind of want to angle those craft fur fibers back. You can see I didn't have to use that much craft fur up front because I got that body tubing in there. So it really adds mass without a bunch of material, which makes flies easier to cast, and I think they swim better, just breathe a little bit easier. Tapers in there. We might add just one little more clump in there though. Tying it in reverse still. Pushing it on there. Around. And around. There you go. Works. Try to get everything back so we can just get our whip finish in there. What I'm going to do is that same trick where I'm just going to put some UV resin on the thread. Once it's on there, don't worry about a whip finish because that's not coming off. So that's it. That is the craft fur game changer. Nice taper to it. Thing's gonna move great. And you could go through and take a Sharpie, bar that whole thing up. I kind of like them both ways. This one I'm just gonna leave just that color blend going in it. No real, no bars, no bar marking or anything like that. But yeah.